Hi, I'm Josh. Thanks for clicking play on this video. I was going to be talking about my 2025 year in review in terms of video gaming, and I'm still going to do that. However, this has expanded into something slightly bigger than that, because when I sat down to look at these video games here, I realized I've really only been playing modern video games since November of 2024, because prior to that, I hadn't really touched a video game hardly since maybe the year 2000-ish, when I was playing Age of Empires 2 on a Pentium 2, and then prior to that my little gamer heart was enjoying Amiga games. So it's been many years since I really dove into video gaming, and it really wasn't until November of 2024 that I started to do so. One of these days I'll have to make a video talking about my history with video gaming, because I definitely very much grew up with the whole, I guess, starting with Atari, then Commodores, then Amigas, and I was very much a video gamer for my entire childhood into my early adulthood, then sort of left it behind, obviously, for a while after my Pentium 2 days. But one of these days, maybe I'll make a video talking about all that and about all my childhood favorite games that I played on Amiga and Commodore and that sort of thing. But yeah, so I decided that instead of looking at just the year of 2025, I would tack on a couple months before and 1 month after, and I would look at everything I've played from the beginning of November 2024 to the end of January 2026, and in so doing I would cover literally all the games that I have played since I rediscovered the whole world of video gaming. So basically, in that 15-month period, I've played 26 different games, at least for 2 hours. There have been a bunch of other games that I've played for just an hour or two that didn't really hit right with me, that I just tried out briefly and then uninstalled or set aside and thought, well, this doesn't seem like a game for me. And because I never gave the game a fair shake, I didn't bother to do a review or anything like that. I just sort of set it aside. And so these are all the games that I've actually played at least a couple of hours. And talking about playtime, I was going to leave this stat out because I didn't really want to talk about how much of my life I've been wasting. However, I'm nothing if not an oversharer. I've always been quite an open book, and so I will let you know that the total hours played over those 15 months is 719 hours. Not counting all the games that I just played for an hour or two. These are just those 26 games. And that averages out to 48 hours per month, or about 1.5 hours per day over the past 15 months of playing video games. If I break down those hours by average hours played of those 26 games, I get an average of 27.6 hours played per game. However, only 5 of those 26 games have that much time or more. All the rest have less than 27.6 hours, because the top 5 games that I played the most, I played way more than anything else. So that's really bringing up the total average of playtime. In terms of my average rating of these 26 games, I have an average rating of exactly 7.0 out of 10. Now, at this point, I was going to go through a ranking of my most played games of this past 15 months until I realized that, with video gaming, unlike with board gaming, where board gaming is very much a social hobby, where I don't always have a say in what games are being played, and therefore I don't play my top favorite games all the time. Single-player video gaming, on the other hand, is a situation where I can play just my favorite games all the time, and therefore my personal top 6 favorite games of all time, the 6 games that you'll see stand head and shoulders above the rest for me, are also the games that I have played by far the most out of all the other games. So instead, as I go through my actual rankings of these 26 games, you'll see that when I get to the top favorite games, that they are also going to be my most played games. So we'll skip the most played aspect of it, and we'll just jump into the rankings here. I'm going to just blast through these 26 games from my lowest ranked game to my highest ranked game. In situations where I have a tie of the rating out of 10, I will rank them by which one I like better than the other. And before I jump into those, I do have to start with a couple of honorable mentions. Specifically, I do want to mention the Jackbox Party Pack games, because they are just the perfect multiplayer party games. I own the Jackbox Party Packs 2, 3, and 7, and they are absolutely great games that I would rate, 9 or 10 out of 10, but they are different than the rest of this list because the rest of these games are strictly single player gaming that I have done. And so I just wanted to mention those though as being really great games to play with other players. The first game of this ranking list is going to start a bit of a pattern in that there are two genres of games that I've been searching for to find the game that is just right for me. One of those genres is the genre of city building games, where you start off with a little hut and a couple people and you build up a nice functioning city. You'll see that I've tried several of them and haven't found the one that really clicks with me. The second genre that I've been searching for is a good train route building connection game based around trains specifically. You'll see a couple of those come up here too. And again, I haven't quite found the one that's perfect for me. And weirdly enough, that also applies to my board gaming in that I'm constantly searching for the train game that has just the right mix of elements that makes it great for me. And I actually tried to design one myself quite some years back. And so, yeah, these are two things that you'll see repeating a little bit as I go through this ranking list. So let's get right to that. We start with number 26, a game called Islanders, which is a very basic city builder, a game that I played for 2.5 hours and I rate 3 out of 10. Number 25 is called River Towns. This is a very board game-like tile-laying city builder. I played it for 2 hours and rated 3 out of 10 because there's really just not much game to either of those ones. Number 24 is The Battle of Polytopia, which is a Civ 4X light game with a theme of sort of older medieval civs fighting against each other. I played it for 4 hours and rated it 5 out of 10. Number 23 is Far Cry Primal, an open-world action-adventure survival game based in prehistory, which is a theme that always grabs me, and I really wanted to like this game, but after 7 hours of play, I rated it only 5.5 out of 10. Kingdoms and Castles is yet another city-building game based in a medieval fantasy world. It's nice and simple to a certain extent, but after 6 hours of play, I rate it 6 out of 10. Number 21 is The Planet Crafter, a game that I went to after loving Subnautica, which you'll see coming up later, which is an open world survival exploration base building crafting game that I put 11 hours into and rate 6 out of 10 because the overall gameplay just wasn't as interesting to me as it could have been. Number 20, Mini Metro is a route building puzzle game that I played for 3 hours and rate 6.5 out of 10. Number 19, AV Assembly, a really unique flying game where you have to build your own aircraft and deliver goods and use that money to upgrade your aircraft parts and build better aircraft. I played it for 3 hours and I was a little frustrated that I couldn't quite seem to figure out the aircraft building part of it. I rate it 6.5 out of 10, but I could see me coming back to it again at some point and trying it again. Number 18 is Against the Storm, yet another city building game. This one in a fantasy roguelite setting where you are playing cities over and over again. So before they get to the boring part, we have a huge sprawling city that you got to micromanage. You reset with another one. So in that aspect, as well as with the visuals and the fun theme, it seems like one that I should enjoy. After 3 hours of play, I only gave it 6.5 out of 10 because I got fairly quickly overwhelmed with how complex it was. But if I do eventually put the time into learning how to play it properly, this could be one that I enjoy a lot. Number 17, The Battle for Wesnoth is a fantasy turn-based strategy game with exploration and combat. I played it for 12 hours and rated it 7 out of 10. Number 16, now we get into the train games. We have Train Valley, which is a route building puzzle game that I played for 5 hours and rate 7 out of 10. And honestly, this is the closest to what I was looking for in a train game. But there were aspects of it, again, that didn't quite push it to that real top tier, and I ended up at 7 out of 10. Number 15 is Age of Wonders, a huge, complex fantasy civilization 4X game that I played for a full 21 hours, but ultimately only rated 7 out of 10 because it just got a little too overwhelming with all the different things that was going on. I was yeah, cool little game, but you really have to devote the time to learn all the little details and the nitty-gritty of all the different stats and stuff. Number 14, Gran Turismo 5 is a driving racing simulator that I played for 8 hours and rate 7 out of 10. Number 13 is Railbound, which is not a route building train game like I was hoping it was going to be, but it was a pretty cool little puzzle game based on how you build different track connections. I played it for 10.5 hours and rate it 7.5 out of 10. Number 12 is Bridge Constructor Medieval, which is a building puzzle game where you're building bridges with limited incomes. I played it for 13 hours and rate it 7.5 out of 10. Number 11 is Dredge, a rather unique horror-ish game which is about exploration and fishing and has this mysterious narrative going on that you're trying to figure out in the background. I played it for 12 hours and rated 7.5 out of 10. It had some really intriguing stuff going on, but the overall gameplay and the fishing itself just got to be a little bit of a drag after a while. Number 10, Shell Shock Live. Actually, this is a game that is not strictly a solo game, and in fact, it's really best when you play with one or more other players because it's a turn-based artillery lobbing game where you're just lobbing various munitions back and forth at each other until you destroy your opponent's tank. I've played it for 11 hours, both solo and with my kids, and I rate it 7.5 out of 10. Number 9 is Mini Motorways. Much like Mini Metro, it is a route building puzzle game that I played for 14 hours and rate 8 out of 10. Number 8, Empire Deluxe Combined Edition, which is a 4X light game in kind of a modernish setting. I would say roughly maybe 1980s-ish time period. It's 16 hours of play into that, and I rate it 8 out of 10. Number 7 is a game called Wool at the Gates, which is a tower defense game that the developers obviously very much copied another tower defense game called Thronefall, which I'm going to mention here shortly. I played it for 10 hours, and I rate it 8 out of 10. Now, these top 6 games, like I said previously, are really the cream of the crop. These are the ones that are my S tier, just absolutely hooked me in games. So at and also my most played games as well. So number 6, Bad North Jotun Edition is another tower defense game that I played for 21 hours, and so it's tied in 6th place for overall hours played, tied with Age of Wonders 4, and I rate this one 8.5 out of 10. At number 5, I have Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which is an ancient Greek open world action adventure game that is my number 1 most played game with 240 hours into it, and in fact it is double the playtime of my second most played game, so it was far and away my most played game. I have mixed feelings about the game in terms of just the setting, the environment, the world that you're in is absolutely spectacular, while the gameplay itself is a little repetitive and gets a bit tiring. But overall, I decided to rate it 8.5 out of 10 because it obviously kept my interest enough to keep playing it anyways. At number 4, we have Subnautica Below Zero, which I put 60 hours into and completed the game, so it is my number 3 most played game of all time. I rate it 8.5 out of 10. Into the top 3 now, we have at 3, Thronefall, another tower defense game that I put 54 hours into, so it's my number 4 most played game, and I rate this one 9 out of 10. Just an amazing little tower defense game. At number 2 is the game that is the reason that I wanted to include January 2026 in this overall list. And so I will talk about this game a little bit more in an upcoming video when I talk about the games that I played in January. But this is a game called Enshrouded, which is an open world survival, exploration, action, adventure, base building, crafting, all kinds of wild stuff going on. And it's not even in full release yet. The 1.0 version is not yet available, and yet I have 50 hours into this one already as of the end of January. And my initial rating is 9 out of 10, and it is already my 5th most played game of all time, even though I really only started it in January of this year. And then my number 1 game of all time, which wildly was also the very first video game that I started playing way back in November of 2024 when I got into these modern video games. And so I completely lucked out with immediately discovering this incredible game. It was just the theme that brought me in. And this is Subnautica, an underwater, open world, survival, exploration, action, adventure, base building, crafting game that I put 120 hours into and completed the game. This is my second most played game, and I rated 9.5 out of 10. It's just a amazing, fun game if you're into that sort of thing. Speaking of that sort of thing, this really highlights the fact that I have apparently 3 genres of game that really hit well for me. And shockingly, when I started into this exploration of modern video games, I never in my life would have thought that, well, number 3, I could have seen that being a thing that might be interesting to me. But these other 2 were surprises to me. So anyways, my third favorite genre based on these top 6 games, it would be action adventure. So games like Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which is almost purely action adventure with some RPG and exploration elements, as well as Enshrouded and the Subnautica games, all are heavily action adventure oriented, definitely fall within that category. Number 2 is a big surprise to me. I never would have thought I would enjoy a tower defense style game, and yet here we are with Thronefall and Bad North being 2 of my 6 favorite games of all time. But it's a very specific type of tower defense game, because I have tried Kingdom Rush, and that just really didn't hit in nearly the same way. So I think that games like Kingdom Rush or Bloons TD are a slightly different type of tower defense game that doesn't have that same appeal to me. There's something about having almost an open world of where you can decide where you want to focus your defenses, where you control your own little character or little groups of characters so that you have this tactical element. There's something about Thronefall and Bad North specifically, and I guess by association Wool at the Gates, which like I said is more or less a copy of Thronefall, that appealed to me a lot. But my number 1 favorite genre based on these games is this real mishmash of the open world, exploration, survival, action adventure, base building, crafting, all this stuff that you find in games like Enshrouded and Subnautica Below Zero. It's just a combination that seems to work absolutely amazingly for me. And these 3 games specifically, Enshrouded and the 2 Subnautica games, account for 230 hours of the 719 hours of gaming that I've done. So that's kind of wild. Now let's finish off by looking at some games that you might see me talking about in the future. So these are games that I am expecting that I'll probably get to fairly soon. These are also games that I am most anticipating that are not released yet, that are coming up sometime in the hopefully near future. But we'll start with the games that I currently have installed on my computer. And so these are the ones you can expect to hear from the soonest, I guess. I currently have 10 games installed, and I will go in order of the ones that I have the most time into to the least amount of time. So number 1 is I still have Assassin's Creed Odyssey installed. I was going to uninstall it after I finished it until I discovered that my old crew came back to me in my retirement and said, hey, we got this other adventure that we want to take you on. And so I thought I was finished with the game, but then I was like, oh, maybe there's a little bit more yet to explore in this game. I'm not sure if or when I'll get back to it, but despite the fact that I have 240 hours into the game, I might even put a little bit more time into it yet at some point. Next up is Enshrouded, which, like I said, by the end of January, I had 50 hours into. And then there's several games here that I don't have a lot of time into yet. First is Age of Empires 4 Anniversary Edition, which is a real-time strategy civ game, classic Age of Empires. I have 3.9 hours into this game. I have mixed feelings about it. I'll be talking about it at some point in the near future for games played in probably February. Here's a really intriguing one, Outer Wilds, which is a science fiction, story-rich, mysterious exploration adventure game in space where there's something very strange going on. You got to kind of get out there and explore and figure it out. I have 80 minutes into it only, but I'm pretty hooked. I think this is one I'm going to be putting more time into. Next I have Circuit Superstars, which is a top-down racing game, and yet despite the fact that it looks totally arcade-ish, it is very much a challenging racing sim game because the physics are very detailed, I guess, and it's quite a tough game. I have 73 minutes into the game, almost entirely of which I spent trying to figure out how to get my controller to work with the game, because the Steam page says my controller is supposed to work, and yet I could only figure out how to play it on the keyboard, and keyboard controls just aren't for me. If I can't play it on control, or a real-time game like this on a controller, then I'm unlikely to really give it much time. So it was initially on my gaming laptop when I had the laptop that I had tried it and couldn't figure out how to get my controller to work. Now I put it onto my new computer. I've yet to try it to see if I can get the controller working on the new computer. If not, I'll probably just uninstall it again and give up on it. But anyways, we have next IL-2 Sturmovik Battle of Stalingrad, which is a World War II combat flight simulator that I have 56 minutes into. It's a challenging, tough simulator that I need to get into the settings and figure out how to simplify it, make it a bit easier for myself. But if I ever talk about my history of video gaming, you'll see that flight simulators have played a big role in my enjoyment of the video game hobby over the years, because ever since I was a little kid I've been fascinated by military aircrafts and read all kinds of books about those First and Second World War pilots and stuff like that. But anyways, going on to another racing game, we have New Star GP, which is quite a detailed arcade racing game. So yeah, it's definitely an arcade game. It's not a simulation, but there's a lot of different settings and things you can tweak and build up to over time. But so far I only have 41 minutes into it. I'll probably play around with it a bit more. I'm not sure how much it's going to grab me. I might end up playing some more realistic racing games, which I'm going to talk about shortly. Next is Escape from Duckov, which is a top-down extraction shooter with exploration and base building with this little cartoon duck. And I have 40 minutes into it, and I was initially disappointed. It didn't look like the type of game I thought it was based on watching the video clips of it and the previews and stuff, because it looked like just a run around, shoot, collect loot, and blast your way through levels type of game, which is what I was hoping it was. But it turns out it's really a lot more about exploring, finding resources, bringing them back to your base, building technologies and stuff. And I was like, oh, this isn't nearly the type of game I thought it was. So I don't know if I'm going to put any more time into that. Next is another city builder, my latest attempt at finding a city builder for me. It's called Fabledom. This one is in a fantasy fairy tale world, which is what appealed to me about it. Just the whole look of it, it looks really kind of cute and fun. I have 54 minutes into it. It really didn't grab me. When I went back into Steam to look at some of the most recent reviews, people were talking about certain bugs and frustrations with the game, about your people starving. And I was like, oh, here I thought it was going to be a nice relaxed city builder that I could just sit back and enjoy. But if my people are going to be unhappy and starving and it's going to be a frustrating experience, it's not one that I'm going to keep up with. And then the one I have the least amount of time into so far is Sid Meier's Civilization 6, which is a turn-based civ game. I have 11 minutes of play into this one because the other night I started to play the tutorial and realized, oh, it is way too late at night and I'm way too tired to start learning Civ 6. So I shut it down to come back to later. But I'm pretty sure I will get back to it again soon, I hope. These last two categories, we have 7 games that I currently own, I have in my library and I'm eager to play, and then 7 games that are not released yet that I'm most excited to get to when they do get released. Why 7 games for each of these categories? Pure coincidence. There just happened to be 7 in each that I was really quite excited about. So we'll start with the ones that I have in my library. I currently have 136 games in my Steam library, most of which I bought for anywhere from $2 to $10 on Steam sales. But we'll go in order of the games that I'm most likely to get to soon to least likely. So my most likely game to get to in my library next is Sid Meier's Pirates, which is a classic, simple pirate open world adventure RPG. This is one of those childhood favorites that I used to play on the Amiga, and so when I saw that they had a more updated modern version, I thought, oh, this could be a nice hit of nostalgia. I'm a little worried though that once I start playing it now, it's just not going to feel quite the same, but I'll definitely give it a shot. The next game in my library that is likely to get installed in my computer is Assetto Corsa, which is a driving racing simulator. So it's one that, like I said, I might kind of step up from these more arcade-style games to a more realistic driving game, because it's another genre of game, along with flight simulators. Racing simulators have been a big part of my experience in childhood gaming as well. Number 3, yet another city building game called Foundation. This one is a medieval city builder that is getting fairly high praise. There's been a lot of these city builder type games that have been released in the past handful of years, and this is one that's been sort of at the top of the list for a lot of people, and so maybe I'll give it a try and see if this one works for me. Number 4 is Mass Effect Legendary Edition, which is a story-rich science fiction RPG where your choices matter and actually affect the story. And I've heard lots of good things about it, and it's just a big game that, since I'm already in a big game, enshrouded there, I don't know if I want to start yet another big one, which brings me into the next one, number 5, Red Dead Redemption 2, another gigantic open world, Old West, story-rich action-adventure game that has been receiving praise ever since its release, that is constantly talked about as one of the best games of its type out there. But again, it's one that you really got to devote a lot of hours into to really get the full experience out of it. So yeah, I don't know. You can let me know if stuff like Mass Effect or Red Dead 2 are games that I should really dive into and it's worth devoting my time into. Number 6 is Detroit Become Human, a futuristic science fiction, story-rich, mysterious exploration adventure where there's some pretty sketchy stuff going on that you're sort of thrown into, and whether you like it or not, you are a part of, and so you got to make decisions about how you're going to handle it. And I have dabbled with this one a little bit, and it was one of those things where I started playing it and was just going along doing what I thought I needed to do, and then very quickly went, oh, I can really make decisions that are contrary to where the setting of the game is pushing me towards, or not even the setting of the game, but my position within the society of the game wants me to make certain decisions. But the game is saying, are you going to go along with that? Or are you going to step off on your own, take some big risks and do something completely different? And so it looks like one of these games where your choices really matter, where you can really influence the direction of the game. And so that really has me intrigued. And then number 7 here, the final game that's in my library that I'd like to get to at some point, is XCOM. And I have both XCOM 2 and XCOM Enemy Unknown. You can let me know which is the better of those two, or which one I should start with anyway. But they're both science fiction, strategic and tactical war games with an RPG element that are quite well known, and I'm sure would be fun to get to at some point. And then finally, let's wrap up by looking towards the future, towards these unreleased games that I have my eye on. I currently have 120 games in my wish list, which doesn't mean that I'm going to be purchasing all 120 of these games. It just means that something about each of these games caught my eye enough to put them in my wish list to keep an eye on, to watch the reviews. Only a handful of those 120 games are unreleased games. A large number of them are actually currently available that I could purchase and buy if I wanted to have even more games than all the ones I just mentioned. But anyways, these specific ones are not yet released. I'm going to go in order of my least excited to most excited of these 7 games, although all of these I'm quite excited to check out when they do get released. At number 7, the bottom of this list, is a game called Dino Lords. A crazy looking game that is a real-time strategy base building game that kind of brings to mind a little bit of that Age of Empires style system. But in this game, it looks like you are playing as medieval knights who are being attacked by Vikings, but there are dinosaurs that you can, I guess, tame and ride and bring into battle. So you have knights and Vikings riding on dinosaurs, which would normally, I think, not be the type of thing I'd be into. I'm not really much into these anachronistic type weirdness, but for whatever reason, something about this game says, this frickin' rocks, I gotta try this. Anyways, number 6 is a game that is supposedly working on a re-release or an updated release of the game, and this is Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. And it's one that I've had my eye on for a long time, especially since I did quite enjoy Assassin's Creed Odyssey. This was looking like maybe the next one that I would try, but then I heard that they are working on an upgrade of the game, and so I'm interested to see if that ends up being the case, if they do end up releasing it. This one is a pirate open world action adventure game, much along the lines of Assassin's Creed Odyssey, I suppose, but in the seafaring pirate setting. I will add, though, the one hesitation is the fact that with Assassin's Creed Odyssey, the naval combat was one of my least favorite aspects of the game. Most of the time when I had to do naval combat, it was just like, oh, I got to do this. All right, let's do it. But, I've heard a lot of good things about Black Flag, so I'm interested to see if they do end up reworking that one. Number 5 is a game called Crimson Desert, which has a lot of hype so far. It's a fantasy steampunk, maybe, open world action adventure game that is showing a lot of promise. Whether it delivers on that promise or not remains to be seen, but I definitely have my eye on it. Number 4 is in the same category as Assassin's Creed Black Flag, in that it is one that's supposedly getting reworked, and that is Fallout New Vegas. And again, I've heard that they are working on an enhanced edition of the game. I hope they are, because I'd love to check it out. The main reason that this is on the list is because I've been loving the TV series Fallout. I almost never watch TV because it takes something really special to grab me enough to watch through an actual TV series, but Fallout has definitely done that. And in fact, it might be one of my favorite, if not my favorite, TV series of all time. I'm almost through season 2, and it hasn't been quite as good as season 1. Season 1 was just absolute perfection. But anyways, that's the whole reason that Fallout New Vegas is on this list. Number 3 now is Stoplights. Getting back to these train games, this is supposed to be a train-based route building, network building game that looks really promising, and I hope lives up to that initial impression that I have of the game. Number 2 is a game called Zombocalypse Now, which is a zombie tower defense game that looks again to be heavily inspired by Thronefall, my number 3 game of all time. And strictly because of that it is one of my most anticipated releases of the year. And that brings me to my number 1 most anticipated release, which should not be a surprise to you if you have been following along with the world of modern video gaming, and this is Subnautica 2, a game that I am so psyched to get to. And I will say that my younger son Wyatt, this is probably his most anticipated release as well. He just talks about it constantly because he sat next to me for much of my playthrough of Subnautica and took over control here and there as we played, and absolutely loved it. Now, there's been some really unfortunate negative stuff going on in the background of this game's production. I hope that doesn't ruin the game or completely tank it. As far as I can tell, they're still working away on getting it released, but that stuff aside, all the negative stuff that's going on there, I really do hope it gets released and it really lives up to the level of excellence that was provided by the original Subnautica game. So those are some things that I'm looking forward to. I don't know if I'll find the time. I'd love to do more video game based content on my channel, but there's just so much stuff that I need to record, and getting a little burned out on all this video editing business. But we'll see how things go. I'd really love to hear though what games you've been enjoying based on the titles that I've mentioned here, do you have any recommendations for me based on my favorite games that I've stated here and some of the other titles that I said I'd like to get to at some point? Do let me know if you have recommendations, and I would also love to hear if there's anything that is upcoming that is yet to be released that you're also anticipating that I should maybe take a look at and add to my wish list too. So please do get into the comments. I'd love to hear from you, and in any case, I just appreciate you watching. Cheers. Hi, I'm Josh. Thanks for clicking and play on. Crohn's disease is fun. I really started to get into the known for felt that one coming. Hasn't been hit mass hobby over the years. The next one in my the rest of the games in this list are strictly the games